Welcome to Progressive Soup. I am Mark Morash, co-host. Sitting to my left is David Stevenson, although he's really not sitting to my left and I'm not really sitting here. This is technological foolery, Trump foolery. We are in a remote location in our bunker hiding. These are just projections. It's like, R2-D2 showing the princess at the beginning of Star Wars. We are holograms. Isn't that cool? So if I go to eat my soup, it'll go right through me.
Or if I took my soup and used it as a hat, miraculously, if I took my soup and used it as a hat,
he will not burn.
I'm soup resistant.
He is burning for the burn, for the Burnmeister, for Bernie 2020. I guess we have to rescind our presidential campaigns that we announced a few weeks ago, because if he's going to run in 2020, I don't want to run against him.
Oh, okay, good. And we're going to, who's to say that he can't run in 2020? He ended up being younger looking at the end of this campaign cycle than he did at the beginning. I mean, by the time 2020 rolls around, he might be about 40 years old. At the rate he's going, it'd be like, what's the movie with Brad Pitt where it rewinds from back to front? He starts off really old.
The modern uptake on Dorian Gray, right?
Exactly. I forget the name of the
Benjamin
movie.
Button.
The Amazing Case of Benjamin Button. It's going to be the Amazing Case of Bernie Sanders.
The Amazing Case of the Bernie Buttons.
I'm hearing the music from that, and I can just see Bernie Sanders is getting younger throughout the entire process. Don't take him too far, because we got to keep him at least 35 years old, otherwise he can't run.
Well, we did have the Willy Wonka reference yesterday's show, and there is the second or the third book. I guess it's the second book, The Great Glass Elevator, where they go backwards and the grandparents become kids again, and they get into the whole thing. So it's Wonkalicious, the post-election landscape.
So turn the burners on your stove, because we're going to get Wonkalicious, and we're going to have a young Bernie Sanders running in 2020. And I think it's fair to say that Donald Trump might still be president come November 2020. I think, do you think there's any chance that he might, what could he do that would upset the apple cart and him still being in the White House?
He could abdicate the throne.
He might never show up on day one. He might say, Mike Pence, hey Pence, you do the job, Pence.
But that's worse, isn't it? Isn't that the danger here? Isn't that the danger of pre-impeachment? There's a term we've never had. See, this whole election cycle has been a plethora of firsts. We've never had a pre-impeachment.
A pre-impeachment.
Pre-impeachment, where he's going to get impeached ahead of time or on his first day, or if we get rid of him, then we're left with Pence.
Or what Pence?
Because all right, I'm gonna lay it on the line here. Here's the thing, and I know this is upsetting, and it's just a little bit of me. It's an itty bitty bit of me.
We got our black on. So we're in mourning. We're in mourning because a lousy candidate won the election. And we're also in mourning because a lousy candidate lost the election. Hey, you got Simon and Garfunkel in the queue? Mrs. Robinson, talk about it, laugh about it, talk about it any way you choose.
Ooh.
Any way you look at it, you lose.
But here's the thing, what if any way you look at it, we don't lose? What if there's a 2% chance he goes up there in his acceptance speech and he says jobs and infrastructure. He's against the TPP, he's lowering the rate of deportations, he's keeping Obamacare as it is. Now granted, I know it doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's this cabinet, as we talked about yesterday, being built around him that's kind of frightening. But what if there's a 2% chance, given that historically he was a Democrat,
How'd you like to have Bruce Bannon come jumping into your first meeting?
I don't. But what if?
Is that Bruce Bannon? That's that from Breitbart.
Bruce Banner from The Doctor, the big green guy.
Oh, okay. I guess it's Steve Bannon, not Bruce Banner.
Bruce. I'd like Bruce Banner in the cabinet. Meeting gets boring, he gets angry, White House wall gets busted through.
Infrastructure jobs at work.
The more the Incredible Hulk destroys, the more infrastructure jobs there are for people.
Rebuild the table.
Yes.
And then rebuild the walls of the White House.
It's perfect. But what if he's a troll? What if Donald Trump is the ultimate troll? What if he convinced 60 million people through his absurd rhetoric that he's going to walk back all of over the course of the next 6 months? What if, and I know that there are people out there who are worried, who are afraid, who are scared, and I get that, and I really do, and that's going to be a lot of conversation of how...
Everybody in the audience is hiding under their seats. I don't know about out there, but in here. Come on, you could come out from under your seats. I mean, you know.
But what if in 4 years, we get to write the article, have the show called The Redemption of Donald Trump? Yeah. What if he walks all of it back? It's just a thought experiment. It's not saying I support him.
He moved a little. In 3 days, he's already moved a lot of his proposals back. He, well, first of all, he said that, I met with President Obama. First, he called him President Obama. Can you imagine that? That's the first time he's ever called him President Obama. Yes. Up until now, it's always been Obama. So he met with President Obama and came out and said, maybe there's some good things about, he still calls it Obamacare. He says, there's some good things about that, that I just learned about from President Obama. There's a couple of things in there that I like. I like the fact that youngsters can stay on their parents' policies till 26. I hadn't thought about that, and you probably didn't know about it. So I didn't think about that, but I think that's a pretty good thing. And this idea, this idea about people not being able to be turned down for pre-existing conditions, hey, that's pretty good. I didn't know about that. And he probably didn't.
Yes.
Continue.
Don't we have to believe that people can change? Because if we don't believe that,
is there redemption?
Is there redemption? Or are we on a path for the rest of our lives that every election cycle is going to be the country schismed into two sides battling each other with different takes on things, unable to find common ground? Isn't that how we got into this ridiculously divided two-party politics in the first place?
Wait. Take that Uzi out of the get that guy out with the Uzi out of here. I mean, this is not a carry state. This is not an open carry state. You'll have to go on the Progressive Soup show in Texas. Then you can bring the Uzi into the continue.
But I'm not saying it's going to happen. But there's all of this thought process that's not happening now because everyone is so on edge. Everyone is so concerned that everyone's dealing with a niche with a little bit of it, and I feel like there's a big picture that's not getting lost. What is the difference? And this is a question I haven't been able to answer for myself.
Yeah.
What is the overall difference between getting rid of hundreds of polling places for the Arizona primary, the difference between that and trying to convince 25 electors to become faithless electors and jump ship to elect someone else? What is the difference?
Tell us about this Electoral College. What is this thing that we're talking about? And by the way, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow night on our hour live special, Friday, November 18th. We're going to be here in the studio at 5. We'll be on the air from 6 to 7. So tune in. We'll find some stuff to talk about then too. There'll be plenty of stuff we leave on the table after today.
I need a mortarboard for that show. I really do, because we're going to talk about the Electoral College. The Electoral College, which costs you and me and everyone here in the restaurant, costs us billions of dollars a year going to that college. And that is essentially because it is 538 people who decide the presidency. Because you only thought your vote counted. Can I read something? Can I read something?
You can in a second. I want the camera for a second.
Go
because
for
I
it.
got the two-faced part again.
You do.
Okay. Donald Trump, 2012, post-election, thinking that Mitt Romney, somebody told him Mitt Romney won the popular vote. Now, I don't know who told him, who was stupid enough to try to, but Trump fell for it at any rate. That Electoral College, what a sham, what a ripoff. Okay, we'll fast forward it 4 years to 2016. That Electoral College, whew, thank goodness.
Here's the thing about the Electoral College. So
Yeah.
this was written before the election happened.
Mm-hmm.
This was prescient, as they say. At the end of it all, the solution here is to end the Electoral College. If democracy is about one person, one vote, then make it count. Move toward a popular vote tally that decides and decodes the riddle of the presidency. For everyone out there who is now standing up and saying, get rid of the Electoral College, where the heck were you a week ago? I'm going to tick some people off now. I'm going to tick some people off. This is what's going to happen.
You might tick me off, but go ahead.
I'm going to tick you off. That's good. We're going to have a good conversation about this.
Okay, tick me off. Tell me about the Electoral College and why it's not a good thing.
I don't know if it isn't a good thing. I just feel like at this point in time, with the technology we have, the ability to tally votes, although granted, I have said to you many times, I don't know that I even believe the computerized tallies of all the voting, because we have no idea if our vote that we voted for actually counts as the vote that we voted for.
In some states, because they don't have a backup, a paper backup like we do in Connecticut.
You know, I go to Stop and Shop and I get a receipt that's this long. They can't give me a receipt when I vote?
They could, couldn't they?
I mean, they'd have to train people to switch out those totally annoying reels of paper that get pink at the end when they're running out. But I think we can train people to do that.
Yeah.
But
that's a good point. I mean, if you go to your ATM to take out $20,
you get a receipt.
You get a receipt, courtesy of what's the company's name? Diebold. Who also makes voting machines.
So you're saying they already have the technology to print a little receipt?
It's right there every time you go to the ATM. Anywhere you get a receipt.
So which is more secure, an ATM or a voting machine?
I would like to think that a voting machine would be more secure, and I would like to think that voters would go to a poll and cast their vote, and afterwards say, "Hey, where's my receipt?" I mean, I got a receipt at the ATM for $20. I didn't get a receipt for this vote I'm casting in what is a fairly important thing for America.
Here's my beef, or being vegan. Here's my tofu, or my seitan, or my tempeh with the Electoral College.
Yeah.
A state of despondency, because we're all going to rename it. Anyhow,
we're all in the state of despondency.
The puns are horrible. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
Candidate A gets 1 million votes.
Yep.
Candidate B gets 999,999. Candidate A gets all 10 of the electoral votes.
That would be probably, I think Arizona has 10.
Arizona has 10.
Yeah.
Candidate B gets none. Those 999,999 votes count
in vain
for nothing. So if you have 49 states that get won by one vote, enough to give you all of the electoral votes, we'll add DC in there, you win by one vote, but then one state like California, the other candidate wins by 4 million votes. You get what we have now, where a candidate wins the popular vote and loses the Electoral College. So to me, there's a sense that, and I know that there are arguments for and against it, but to me, it means that a whole bunch of people who vote feel like their vote doesn't count. And I feel like if people thought their one vote counted equally as everyone else's vote, we'd get a higher turnout. And so I'm looking at it in a bit of a vacuum of thinking, would the emotional feeling of my one vote counts as much as everyone else and doesn't become filtered down to 538 electoral votes.
So you believe that in a state like Kansas, that somebody that would have voted for Donald Trump might have said, the hell do I need to go to the poll for? He's got my state. I've seen the polls. He's going to win. I know he's going to win Kansas, so why should I show up? Likewise, a person in Connecticut might say, no, I'm going to take Maine, because I want to come back to Kansas and Maine in a moment. A person in Maine says, you know, it's a reliably blue state. Clinton's going to win. Why should I go out and why? You know, I got better things to do. The sky is blue. The air is clear. It's cold as hell. Why should I get out of bed and go vote when my vote doesn't really count? And the reason why I mentioned Maine and Kansas is because, and I'm going to flip Kansas to Nebraska because I think it's Nebraska. I got to correct myself at a moment, at the last moment. In Maine and in Nebraska, even if you win the popular vote, unless you win by a very significant amount, you don't get every electoral college vote. You get a proportion. So therefore, if you'll look back at the final electoral tally, you'll see that in Kansas, Clinton got an electoral vote. You'll see in Maine that Trump got an electoral vote. It's not winner take all in those states. So I think that's maybe a step in the right direction, and here's a double kudo for Maine. In Maine, they are going to begin using, as they voted for on Election Day, they voted for, it's called instant runoff voting, something of that nature. I call it instant runoff voting, where you go into the polling place, and let's say you've got on your presidential ballot or on any ballot, you've got more. Let's say, just for an example, on the presidential ballot, let's say you've got Donald Trump, you've got Hillary Clinton, you've got Jill Stein, and you've got Gary Johnson. You go in, and let's say you feel like you're obligated to vote for Hillary Clinton because you hate Donald Trump. But going forward in Maine, you can go in and you can say, well, who do I think is really the best candidate for the presidency of all four? And you vote for Jill Stein. But you say to yourself, you know, if Jill Stein doesn't win, if she doesn't get 50% of the vote, I'm going to put down Hillary Clinton as my backup. And I'm going to put, let's say I'm going to put Gary Johnson as my second backup. Donald Trump I'm not going to mention because he's not even my third backup. So you're able to vote for the candidate that you really honestly believe is the best candidate, and you cover your bases so that if your candidate doesn't win, you had the opportunity to vote for who you think is the best candidate, but you got a backup vote and even a second backup vote when you've got four candidates, and even a third backup vote. You could say, well, Stein didn't win, Clinton didn't win, Johnson didn't win. What the heck? Let me put Trump as my fourth choice. Conversely, you could go in the voting booth in Kansas, and you could say, or Nebraska, or whatever state, or in Maine, we were talking about Maine, you can go in the polling place in Maine and you can say, well, you know, I hate that Clinton. You can say Sam I am. I hate that Clinton, Sam I am. I hate that green eggs and ham and Clinton. I hate Clinton, but I'm really not keen on Trump either. So let me cast my number one position to Gary Johnson, because I like libertarians. I think libertarians are pretty good. However, if Gary Johnson does not carry 50% of the vote in Maine, I'm going to go as my backup. I'm going to go with Donald Trump, because I don't want that horrible Hillary Clinton as president under any circumstances. If Gary Johnson doesn't win, if Donald Trump, with Gary Johnson's votes added in, doesn't win, doesn't get 50%, I think I'll vote for Jill Stein as my second backup, because I would rather have Jill Stein than Hillary Clinton. So now you got all the bases covered, and then of course you have the option to, as your fourth candidate, either be Hillary Clinton or
Gloria La Riva.
Or not, yeah. Might have been on the ballot in Maine.
She was on the ballot in a number of states under a couple of different parties.
Okay.
Mostly out west, though. So.
How about?
She was actually an official write-in candidate here in Connecticut as well.
So you could actually write her in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very much so.
Now you can only become a write-in candidate in Connecticut if A, you agree to be a write-in candidate, and B, someone who writes you in.
Correct.
Otherwise, you're not going to see the name on the ballot.
Right.
But if you're astute enough to know who that person is, and frankly, I don't, so I have to plead ignorance there. If you don't know who they are, then you're not going to write them in, but you can write them in. That's a good tool.
Yeah, very
as long
much
as that candidate agrees that they'll honor the fact that you wrote them in.
Yeah.
Was there any word on how many votes in Connecticut that candidate? Who was that candidate again?
Gloria La Riva, the PSL, essentially the socialist candidate.
Okay, popular socialist.
Correct.
Okay.
She got most of her vote tally in California.
Or
but I know,
popular socialist labor.
No, I'm totally blanking on what it stands for right now.
Okay.
And on the
we
spot,
we don't like acronyms anyway, so go ahead.
But no, she got about 43,000 votes nationwide. It's interesting. You can go and you can look and you can see, McMullen from Utah, who interestingly enough,
Evan Mullen, yeah.
I said McMullen.
Evan Mullen, yeah.
Had at one point early in the evening was actually running second behind Trump in Utah, and Clinton eventually overcame him for second, but President-elect Trump got something like 45%, and between Clinton and Mullen, they both got about 20%. I mean, she almost came in third in that state, which is wild when you think about it. But it goes to show how third-party candidates in an area where they're known really can garner some, but overall, overall in the country, he got less than, than Gary Johnson and less than Jill Stein. But the Electoral College.
But I want to deviate from that just a tiny bit. But Evan Mullen, if someone had gone into if they had instant runoff voting or something of that nature in Utah, they could have gone in and said, well, I think Evan Mullen is the best candidate on the ballot. But if he doesn't get 50%, I'll go with Trump. In which case, the apple cart would not have been upset. Trump still would have won. But Mullen may have had more than 20,000 people vote for him.
It would have been very interesting.
And it would have been something he could have said, well, I got 30,000 votes and Trump only got 40,000 votes. Or got 50,000 votes, 10,000 of which he wouldn't have gotten if not for the fact that somebody put him as their second choice.
It shows that the folks in this country, we all need something more than we're being given in terms of a two-party race. And in some way, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, we talked all through the primaries about how things needed to change. And, Arizona being the big one where they were able to close hundreds of polling locations because of the bill that was passed a few years ago. But I'm glad that the conversation about superdelegates came up in the party platform. I'm glad that the conversation about the Electoral College is coming up, that instant runoff voting. I mean, there's an obviousness that the voting process in this country needs to be not simply overhauled, but essentially rebuilt from the ground up, because what's happening now is not working. It's not encouraging people to come out. What well and good is it to say that a candidate won the popular vote when 40%, 50% of the voters didn't come out and vote anyway? I mean, so you're saying you got more of still not half. You still haven't reached half of the country. You haven't been voted for by half of the country. And so it's why, and it's been playing in my brain, and I haven't come to a conclusion yet, but if one complains about hundreds of polling places being closed in Arizona, legally,
and they were in Latino neighborhoods.
How do you then turn around and justify trying to get electors to flip? Is it only because the popular vote, if all of a sudden Trump wins both the electoral and the popular, does the call still go out to try and switch electors to get someone else elected? And how does that take into account the people who voted? I get the reason why. I get why there's a call to try and do anything last minute to have President-elect Trump not become president. But I can't, it happens in a vacuum. And what do you say to the 60 million people who voted for him and say, sorry, we're going to game the system. We don't like when you game the system against us, but we're going to game the system against you.
Yeah.
And I know it's not a popular opinion to take because it's looking at the regime that's going in, but you can't consider the regime without the effect on the people down below. And I wish that the conversation happening was more about trying to find a way to bridge the people who are afraid and afraid of each other, and so, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna put on the two-faced David Stevenson for a moment, and I'm going to talk about, as a preamble to tomorrow night, we're on the air 6 to 7 live. It's a little bit of a touch on what we're going to talk about and what I'm going to say. Just a little heads up.
Ooh.
Okay. The Electoral College is a good thing. Why is it a good thing? Because without the Electoral College, people in states that we know are going to go red wouldn't waste their time voting for that. It cuts down on third-party votes because if you're in a swing state, you don't want to waste your vote on a candidate that's not going to win anyway. So you vote for your major candidate that you love, and you don't vote for your third-party candidate. We'll get to that tomorrow night, opposite.